So, we had some, Maneesha, we had some technical issues in past few times. We've been doing this few sessions on Zoom, and Maneesha and her team have been working hard, making some good investments toward the equipment and the internet service to make this platform a lot more stable and bring the best quality of live audio and video. So as a result, we have technically sound environment with Maneesha. Maneesha, would you like to share a few words about the technical challenges that you had in the past few weeks?
Wow, you put me on the spot immediately. Oh, cruel one. But at least it's done now. Yes, there were some technical challenges, and I know Rakesh was a bit concerned that people who might otherwise be joining us would get a little fed up. But, it put me in mind of Osho telling us about George Gurdjieff, the Russian mystic, when he had a mystery school in France. And when he was in Paris, he would tell his his disciples that, oh yes, I shall speak at Rue de something at a certain time at night. So they'd all very excitedly send the word around and get there at the time, no Gurdjieff. And this happened a few times, and people got really fed up with him. And it was a device. Gurdjieff said, the people who really, really want to be with me will stay. They will be here, however many times, however many difficulties they've had to encounter. So I guess that's true of you as well. If you've been coming to these sessions, which haven't all been plain sailing technically, but you're the right people who are here right now.
Yeah, and I believe everybody can hear Maneesha very well. So if you have any trouble, just put it on the chat or just raise your hand. But I believe everybody can hear her very well, much
Sound
better
is
than the
good.
last time.
Yes,
Yes.
sound.
Wonderful, and thanks for your hard work, Maneesha. I know you put a lot of work in this, making this happen. Yeah. Well, thank you. Okay, so let's get started. So are you ready to be in the spot, Maneesha? Are you ready?
Again?
Yes.
She's
We-
already
We're
there.
gonna try our best to put you on spot.
Okay, yes, I'm ready.
Well, there's nothing serious. It's just a casual talk, intimate conversation between fellow travelers. And we all have path and journey traveled so far. I'm gonna have to. So we all have certain path and journey traveled so far, and some people just go on the same beaten path, and some people like Maneesha and Sadhana jump off and go on adventurous journey. And what it happened to be what I refer as a calling from the most beautiful master Osho. So Maneesha, let's start from the beginning. Back in 60s, a young pretty girl who loved music and dance, Maneesha, with her guitar at the coffee shops in Melbourne, decides to save the world and becomes a nurse. And then working with sick patients in Australia, you start to wonder what happiness is. And that eventually brought you Osho. So my question is that, how did you know that you will find happiness with Osho? And I'm going to ask second question right away, that after so many years of being a seeker and being with master, did you find happiness, and what is happiness to you?
Okay, so I'll just deal with one question at a time. That's all I can retain these days. How did I know I would find happiness with Osho? I didn't. I had, from when I left Australia, I went to Australia to study psych nursing. I went to England then, and then started sort of exploring things that were like the humanistic psychological movement was happening in London at the time. So I got involved in that, and then various other things, Tibetan Buddhist retreat in Scotland called Sammy Ling, a Gurdjieffin group on Haverstock Hill, a Sufi farm in Oxfordshire. And when I look back, I was just stumbling around really comatose. I can take no credit for consciously finding my way to Osho. But I was just really going with what felt good in the moment. Just exploring, and all those things I just mentioned felt good. And, however, there was always the thing, yes, this is lovely, terrific people I'm meeting, but just a sense there's something else. And there's sort of an inner restlessness. And, well, by the way, certainly the question about happiness, I'd thought in studying psychiatry and understanding the mind, the unwell mind, I would get some inkling about happiness. And I didn't find the answer there in formal psychiatry. In fact, the so-called troubled people often felt far more sensitive to me, far more human and likable than the staff, I have to say. So clearly the answer to happiness was not in the mind. And then there I don't know, I guess that question went sort of underground, and I was just being guided by what felt good, I guess what was making me happy. And I was on my way back to Australia, having been away some years, and was able to suddenly, because my father sent me a little extra money, able to call into Pune on the way back to Australia. And I was very resistant, I have to say. I'm very strong-minded and absolutely did not need a guru and was not going to wear a mala around my neck and orange robes. And within minutes of meeting him, everything turned. And I can't say, Rakesh, that it was, oh, now this is where my search for happiness ends. What did happen was, on a really visceral level, that restlessness that had been driving me for maybe half a dozen years or so disappeared. It disappeared that night I took sannyas, and 47 years later, it's never returned. So if happiness is feeling that, I'm going to start crying now. If happiness is finding your place, in spite of what that means, and it did mean some heartbreak, not going back to my family because I felt so strongly. If that's what happiness is, then I had found it. But it wasn't without tears.
Wow. So touching, so beautiful. Maneesha, I would like to thank you for pouring your heart. So if we could just go further, Sadhna, you were there when back in 70s, right? Can you,
I'm an old horse.
so,
Galloping still.
so what was happening at the time? You know, I heard Maneesha was also involved in practicing Osho meditation as it was being prepared. Would you like to
Okay,
ask
yeah.
Maneesha what's going on at the time?
Okay, so let me tell you, in 1974, in March, Osho came to Pune, and he wanted to establish his commune there with nothing to build on. There was no property. His disciples bought 2 houses in Koregaon Park, number 7 and number 33. Yeah, that's all he had. And somehow, people from the West, the Western therapists, Western psychiatrists, Western seekers, they started coming, they started pouring in huge numbers. And Indians were totally surprised because up to now he was an Indian guru, their Osho, their guru, And suddenly, when all these people started coming, then Osho started therapies. He introduced many therapies. Before that, only dynamic and Kundalini, these two meditations were established, which he himself developed, dynamic. And after he came to Pune, then Kundalini was done. And then he started developing new meditations. At that time, Maneesha arrived there October 74, no, Maneesha?
That's right.
Yes, October 74. And after that, he used to give darshans. Darshans means having some people around him in the evenings, and they were question answers, and he would solve their issues, give them. That's very interesting. And Maneesha has really recorded all these conversations into Meditation Inc. We used to call them darshan diaries. And there are so many invaluable short methods. Because when Osho spoke to people, he was not a therapist. He gave them short meditations or touch on the forehead or whatever he used to do. At that time, Maneesha was always there because she asked him to write the book based on these conversations. At that time, he also started developing new meditations. So what Maneesha told me, prayer meditation was developed at that time. Nataraj, that was the beginning of Nataraj. Then Nada Brahma, laughter, and what else, Maneesha?
Can't remember. It'll come back.
You'll remember. And also later...
I'm not good with lists.
Okay. So, and also later, the very famous last meditative therapy, which Osho devised from his own experience, talking to your body-mind. So Maneesha says she was a guinea pig for all these methods. So Maneesha, now you can describe, maybe starting with which one you would like to start with. Nataraj?
Well, Sadhana, if I may just backtrack a little bit to explain my understanding of what darshan was about. It was an opportunity for people, for visitors, as I was, of course, on that first night that I met Osho, for visitors, people just passing by, and many did just pass by, and people who had already become sannyasins, to meet Osho if they were guests, and if they were sannyasins, perhaps they had a issue about their meditation or their relationships, or should I go back to the West or stay here? And Indians coming perhaps with their families and so on. So it was an opportunity, an amazing opportunity to sit right inches away from Osho and ask him your personal question. So they would happen in the evenings, and then in the mornings he'd be speaking to the public. And as part of those conversations with people, according to what issue they came, sometimes Osho, that would give rise to Osho suggesting a technique. Someone might say, I've got such and such happening, and he would always so incredibly respectful. That's the word I keep coming back to with Osho, the way he regards us. He'd say, So I will show you a new meditation, Maneesha. And I would come because my job was now at this point to, I hadn't just started yet. Later I started the darshan diaries. Anyway, I was sitting there because I was also being a sort of energy medium. That's another story. We're talking about the meditation. So he might say, come here. And, the prayer meditation, Sadhana, that was the first one.
Yeah.
I remember this young Canadian doctor, can't remember his problem. Osho said to me, so there's this, let's envisage the scene. There's Osho in his beautiful armchair, his caretaker and secretary on one side, people on the other, and I was sitting over by the wall in those days. So I would sit in the middle of this semicircle in front of Osho, and he said for the prayer meditation, now just kneel on your knees like the Sufis do and raise your arms up. And just imagine that you're being poured on with energy like a waterfall. So I did that. And I was ready just to imagine it. Arms up feeling. And then just suddenly, my whole body started shaking. And I was full of energy. And I was sort of taken over and being shaken. And then after a few minutes, Osho said, now bend down, so like a Sufi, bending down to the floor, and just release that energy into the earth. So I did that. And then he said, and again, I raised my arms up, feel full of energy, let yourself be possessed. And then when you're so full you can't take it anymore, again, release it to the earth. So I did a few times, and he just said quietly, good, Maneesha, and I went back to my place. And so he talked to everyone there. Perhaps we were a group of, I don't know, perhaps 12 people or so. It's a small number in the early days. And he said, so this will be the prayer meditation.
Oh, he said that at the time.
Yes.
Wow.
And he said, and you need to do this 7 times, one time for each chakra.
Yeah.
If you do it 3 or 4 times, then there'll be a sense of incompletion. So to do this 7 times. And then later he said to me privately to continue this method. Yes. And that had a very, very powerful effect on me. I won't go into that now, but that was personally really transformative for me as it happened. And then on another occasion, it was gibberish. We're doing gibberish, and I remember doing the gibberish and in front of people. And then one time I started crying, and I remember Osho saying later, again, very gently, very respectfully, you know, if tears come, just redirect it into the gibberish. So it was not about going into, was the catharsis in the sense of going into the feeling. And it was only years later, actually, that Maitreya, who had been a politician, elderly Indian sannyasin who was living in Osho's house, he said to me once, Maneesha, you know that time when you were demonstrating gibberish? He said you were speaking an Indian dialect. So that was sort of esoteric, wasn't it? Stuff came up out of me. Of course, Osho didn't say anything at the time. So that was gibberish.
Hindi. You're speaking in Hindi?
I can't remember.
Language.
I can't remember if he said Hindi, but he said a dialect anyway.
Okay, your past life maybe.
And then, what was it? Oh, another one, Nada Brahma.
Yeah.
I don't know what the person's question was that prompted this, but Osho said, Maneesha, come here. And he said, start dancing. Well, I happen to love dancing, so, and I'm not self-conscious, so I just started waltzing around, humming the tune of Plaisir d'Amour, just swirling around. And so that was fun. And then he said, very good, Maneesha, now do Tai Chi. Well, I hadn't never done Tai Chi, but I understood it was very sort of studied, conscious movements, moving very slowly. So I did a sort of my version of Tai Chi. And then afterwards he said, so which did you like best? I said, well, they're both beautiful in their own ways. And then out of that, we ended up not doing Tai Chi or ballet dancing, but Nataraj. Nataraj meditation was born. Yes. Nada Brahma.
It was the same time he asked you to look at the moon, you told me once.
No, I'm coming to that one.
Okay.
The Nada Brahma one, he talked about humming, the effect of humming, and then director said, just do this with your hands. Put your hands at your hara, at your belly, and have your palms upturned, and just start moving your hands forward and out in big circles, and just feel that you're sending energy out. So I did that for a little bit. And then he said, now turn your hands over, and just the reverse, as we all know. The second phase, the 7.5 minutes is... And I can't remember if he asked me if I could feel the difference. But anyway, then that became Nada Brahma.
But there was no humming, Maneesha?
Yes, he had talked about humming at the beginning, yes.
Okay,
How
so you
humming
did
is.
humming and then hand movements.
Perhaps I did humming, perhaps he just said you start with humming and then do the hand movements.
Yeah.
Yes, so Nada Brahma was then born. But the one that was really, really, I mean, he other things would happen too, sort of energetic things, like someone would come with some block or something, and Osho would have them sit in front of them and then of him, and then I would stand behind and he'd just say something like, just put your hands, or he'd just indicate, put your hands on their shoulders. And I'd just stand there with my eyes closed. I had no idea what I was meant to be doing. But maybe that's why he asked me to do it, because I didn't have any sort of esoteric ideas about what I might be doing. So I would just sort of, he says, stand there, do this, so I'll do that. So just to say, there are all sorts of situations came up each evening. And I was just, for me, it was fun. It was like, what's he going to ask me to do next? And I was up for anything because I completely trust him. And it was just, I was curious. So this particular night, again, I can't remember what the issue was that initiated, but he said, go and stand over facing the garden. And just to set the scene, what became the car porch, those of you who are familiar with Osho Meditation Resort, you know the car porch. They're the beautiful marble car porch that used to have
Yes.
potted plants around the side. And the garden over there, a beautiful waterfall of bougainvillea. So he said, just go and stand there. So I stood there. He said, stand facing the garden. I stood facing the garden. He said, now put your hands on your hips. So I put them behind like that. And he said, now start laughing. And I remember looking up at the moon, standing like this. And I thought, you can't just laugh on order just because someone says laugh. And I started laughing at how ridiculous that was.
Ridiculous.
And then I realized that's what I was meant to be doing. I was meant to be laughing. So I laughed even more. And then Osho started chuckling, and then everybody else started laughing. And it just, it was terrific. It was great fun. And that was the beginning of the laughter meditation. And
So do
as
we have to look at the moon when we laugh?
No, you don't have to look at the moon, but if it's there, why not? So you know, as you know, in many later years, the Mystic Rose incorporated laughter. But on that night, from that night, people started a certain group of people started meeting in a small circle every morning. And Anuprada, perhaps you remember this, holding hands and just laughing. And there've been various variations on that laughter theme through the years. But yes, that was wonderful. And in fact, I thought, while we're together, why don't we now have a taste of that meditation?
Yeah.
So my suggestion is we laugh for 5 minutes. I've got my bells here. We laugh for 5 minutes. Then we're silent for 5 minutes.
Yes.
And the original instructions were lie on your belly for 5 minutes. So if it's comfortable for you now, you could lie down on your belly. Otherwise, just sit with your eyes closed. And then we'll dance for 5 minutes.
Yes, sure.
How does that sound?
Sounds good. Yeah,
Fantastic.
let's laugh.
Yep. But we all need to join in. Otherwise, if some of us you just sitting looking at it, that won't work.
I'm
But
going
we
to
have to mute ourselves, no?
I'm going to unmute. For ask you to
Few.
unmute some of you. So just unmute and just participate.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me see the time. Okay, ready?
Yes,
Laughing
ready.
for no reason at all.
Yeah.
Now let's stand up and dance. We have a lovely dance track. Thank you, Rakesh.
Thank you. I must admit that, I must share that I'm having so much fun.
Rakesh, really?
Yes.
Maneesha,
Yes.
Maneesha, Vidya, and Pratibha has come to say hello to you.
Pratibha?
Yeah, Pratibha from bookshop and Vidya.
Pratibha from Bookshop, we're our beloved. Oh, how fantastic.
Yes.
These guys are in Pune. Hello, beloved. Oh, I'm going to start crying.
And Vidya. This is Vidya. You remember?
Vidya. Of course I do.
We send our love to you.
Oh, thank you so much. These guys are all in the meditation resort. It's so lovely to see you guys. So much love. So much love.
They all love
Thank
you
you.
so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
No, they love you so much. No.
Lots of love.
Yeah.
Maneesha, you're so beautiful.
Yes, 16 people here, that's all.
16 behind you.
No, not now, in general.
Oh, General, yes, 16 living in the meditation resort, yeah. It's so
28
lovely.
acres for us.
Yes, it's fantastic. It's such a treat to be able to see you guys, and all of us can
Yeah.
enjoy that. Yeah. We send you all so much love. So everyone all around the world, guys, are thinking of you, of our beloved resort.
Yeah,
Yes, just waiting for the day when we can come back.
we are also waiting.
So before we go further, I like to share a few pictures of you, Maneesha.
Okay.
देख कितना अच्छा ना आगे एकदम नहीं पिक्चर्स दिखा रहे उसके दर्शन की पिक्चर्स
So I'm pretty sure each picture has a story to it, but we'll just go
Yeah,
over
well,
a few pictures
That-
and
That's me when I was very young, or down the right.
yeah, that's.
Down there, that's me when I was young and blonde and a little boy. Yeah.
But in the picture, your hair doesn't look so blonde because it's a black and white picture, isn't it? That's why.
That's right. That was when Darshan moved to Chandizu Auditorium.
Yeah.
Yes. There's Osho giving, and that's the in Buddha Hall, and you can see I've got the little
Yeah, I see that.
thing. What's it called? You know, thing that you put the paper on, chart thing to hold the sutra or the questions. So that's there, just greeting Osho as he's coming in. Yeah, and that's in also in Chandizu Auditorium when Osho started the energy darshans. And as you said, someone would be called up, and then he would touch their third eye, and one of us mediums would be called up, and he would also touch our third eye or top of the head or something.
It's very positive. Yay!
And that was amazing. That was at Rajneeshpuram. Osho would come in all his splendor, of course, in his wonderfully ravishing robes. And one day, out of the blue, you know, he was going like that, and then he indicated to Vivek, his caretaker, to come and dance. And then he looked in my direction, and I kept not coming up because I couldn't believe he's indicating me. And I suppose I went like that, and he went, "Yes, Maneesha," sort of thing. So I joined him, and wow, that was a blast.
Wow.
That was an absolute amazing thing. Vivek was in this particular sequence. Vivek was on his left, and I was on his right, and it was an amazing experience to dance with Osho. And there we're back in Darshan.
Yeah, there's a little boy.
Yes. Yes, and there's also
Another one. Sorry. Yeah, there's another one.
another one in Rajneeshpuram, yes. Dancing as you might imagine, dancing with Osho was extraordinary. Just felt I became energy. I had no awareness of my body, except I had to have an awareness of my body, not to bang into him or fall over or bang into the structure. And equally amazing was the drive-by, dancing and drive-by. And I'd have a little group, other people had little groups with musicians. I had a tambourine, and his car would pull up, and then he'd start going like this and encouraging us all to dance more and more. And that was literally orgasmic. I remember I'd pin a rose in my hair, and I'd have this tambourine that was going crazy, and and then my rose would fly off my head, and then my tambourine would try and make an escape. And it was just wave on wave of energy, totally like an orgasm, just coming up and going through you, and again and again. It was just extraordinary. I mean, it was dance like I've never known it before, that's for sure.
There you are.
Oh, there we are at the gate. Many of you will remember that from Pune 1. There it is, a clipboard. That was the name I was trying to remember. There we are with a list of names of people who booked for darshan. And we had to check, our job was to check that people didn't have any fragrance in their hair or around their body, because Osho's really, really allergic to
That was a big job.
such things. It's a big job, and many people thought it was just a device that we just willy-nilly would tell people they couldn't come, just as a way to test them all as a device. But it wasn't.
I just love the expressions. It's so meaningful.
Are they?
Oh my
Yes,
God.
and that was in, yeah. That's in the porch I was talking about, in the darshan porch with the potted plant behind, and there's the lovely marble floor, and my note-taking, my little books where I'd write notes for the darshan diaries.
If I were there at that time, Maneesha, I would just think that this girl is totally out of my league.
Well, hey, has anything changed? Let's move on.
Yes. Okay. So,
And there we are. That's in discourse. Yes, this is one of the collage that Osho gave me. He had made. He was into painting at one time, making these beautiful collages, and he gave one to his kitchen staff and one to Maitreya, the old, not musician, politician that I mentioned earlier, and one to me and my partner. So that was that. Really objective art, a beautiful example of objective art.
beautiful. So, Maneesha, so you were sitting in front of Osho, asking question, knowing that it's going to be recorded for eternity.
Yeah.
How was it for you?
It became a meditation. You know, sometimes people would stop me in the resort and say, wow, you got so much courage doing that. But it was totally not to do with courage. It was, look, what I told myself was, Maneesha, you as a person don't need to be there. You simply need to be, you've been asked to read out the questions or the sutras. You simply need to be a voice that is loud enough and clear enough for Osho, of course, to hear, but for everybody else. So that made it totally easy, because I didn't need to be there. I was just needed to be that, what I've explained. So there's no self-consciousness. I just wanted to, let that be very clear. And especially with people's questions, you know, this is their opportunity to communicate with Osho. The questions meant a lot to them, and I didn't want to bring my ego, my personality between them and Osho. So I just sort of felt, let me just be a conduit between the person and Osho. And so it was a beautiful meditation. It really was. It's a fantastic experience to not only have Osho gazing at me very closely without blinking, you know how he doesn't blink, and, you know, to hundreds and hundreds of beloveds around me. And as you say, knowing this was being recorded. So, you know, what if I stumble? No, there was never any thought of that. And I don't think it ever happened because, because it was my meditation.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. So during Puna 1, you know, we never witnessed Osho dancing with so much ecstasy. And then in Rajneeshpuram, Master is taking his disciples on a different flight by dancing, Rolls-Royce drives, and so much fun. And I've seen the video. I mean, we just saw the picture of you dancing with Osho. And so would you like to share your experience of Rajneeshpuram and what you gather from such ecstatic moments of celebration with Master?
Well, I've already talked, I think, about that aspect. Just to briefly say Rajneeshpuram, what to say? I mean, what an extraordinary experience it was for all of us. I think certainly for me, and I know many others, to build a city, and not only that, but in the semi-desert of Oregon. It was phenomenal, and I think many of us, I know I had a ball. It wasn't always like that when we first arrived. I didn't take to it at all. I was pining for India. I want to be back in India. And this was so clearly not India. There's no way one could make it India. It was brash, it was American, it was hot. It was about the heat and the work. Not that I minded work, but so very different. But I came to absolutely love it. And it was a very, very important time in our growth. Pune 1, I remember very much, as there was a lot of music group and dancing and love affairs, and it was very much about love and joy. Of course, about Osho was talking about witnessing and so on, but I have the remembrance of color and so much love and dance and singing. Rajneeshpuram was very grounding, and I think we needed that. And then, of course, following that, there was the world tour, and then coming back to what we call Pune 2.
Yeah. So, talking about world tour, you're part of Osho's turbulent world tour, and there was trouble everywhere, getting deported from one country to another. And in general, it's easy to forget the self when you're in such a mission. So I'm just curious about your state of mind at the time. Did you have any fears, especially in fact, the world is not looking up to you so nicely?
We were concerned about Osho. It wasn't personal fear. Everything was about our beloved, and the way American government was able to pull strings all over the world. It was really a lesson in seeing the power of the most powerful country politically in the world. And it was an incredible lesson in really living in the moment, back in the, in the comfort of Rajneeshpuram or Pune 1, we sit in discourse and hear Osho talking about, we don't know what's coming in the next moment. Just be here now, as though this is the only moment. Excuse me. And with yes, that's right. That's what we're trying to do, be in the moment. But on the world tour, we really were in the moment. We did not have a clue. Will we be here in the next hour? Excuse me. For example, in Uruguay, all the time, there was a police car, sitting outside the house. So when we walked, because there's some little houses around in the compound, when we walked into have discourse in the what was the sitting room of the house we were staying in, we'd have our robes on, and we'd see the police, and it actually got to a point where we just sort of wave at them, "Hi guys." But yeah, it was a little unsettling having the police there 24/7, and we were just categorically moved on from every country. I remember an amusing incident when we were in Uruguay, when finally we got word, no, we cannot stay here. You see, because sometimes the governments would say yes initially, then America would come in and say, we're not going to release you from that debt you owe us if you let Rajneesh stay here. So we got word, we've got to get out. So the household, there's about, how many of us? About 8, 10 people. We're going to go and see Osho off. We had our own private aircraft driven by Cliff, the lovely American sannyasin pilot. And I had volunteered, someone need to stay back in the house to look after the house. So I said, I will stay. So I remember going to the door, everybody was piling into cars, making off for the airport. You know, it was pretty tense. We had to get Osho out to safety before the police came. And then I was standing at the door with him, and he turned to me and said, because they were all going off to the left, and he said, Maneesha, if the police come, tell them we went that way. Pointing to the right. So it was so fun. It was so amazing. I was terribly serious. You know, why didn't I just crack up? And I was like, yes, so sure. You know. Well, it was pretty serious. Anyway, it was a phenomenal time. And yes, real lesson in being in the moment. And God, you know, is Osho going to be taken from us? And I remember in Uruguay, when we had to leave, we were going to go next to Jamaica, and then we went to Portugal, and then back to India. But of course, we didn't know that at the time. But me and someone else were responsible for gathering questions from sannyasins to ask Osho for the discourses we had twice a day, yes? That was the ammunition to keep Osho talking to us. We had to supply questions. And I remember feeling and saying to my friend who was working with me on this, let's ask the questions we'd ask Osho if we're never going to see him again. Because that was the reality. We didn't know from discourse to discourse, will we see him again? So, and then it was my job to read the questions. So that was very powerful, to be in that situation where any moment we knew police could arrive and Osho might be put in jail, but and certainly we would be separated from him and helpless to do anything. It's a very strong moment.
Thank you. So when you returned back from the word to, I believe you were in Kulu Manali, taking care of his practical things.
Well, Kulu Manali was before the world tour. That was that was post Rajneeshpuram. We had to leave America, and then I was with him in Kulu Manali, and that was the start of the world tour then. So just going back a bit.
Oh
yes,
okay.
Yes. There was when I had arrived there, I was asked. Neelam, who's looking after him, Osho obviously said to her, train Maneesha in how to look after me, because sort of as a backup. And so she showed me how to put toothpaste on his toothbrush, and I sat with him while he had a meal, and then he would go for a walk each afternoon. There was the press were coming and some local people, and she said, you go for the walk with him today. And so we stepped outside. Osho just took my hand, and we walked together, and it was just so amazing, because any time that I was with him on a one-to-one alone, it was always such a feeling of ordinariness and simplicity. And in a way, no one present, not in a spooky way, but no rough edges, no ego that, you and I, when we're with people, invariably there are times of irritation and little, contretemps. We get annoyed with each other because we're there, aren't we, as two individuals, two egos with our different agendas. But if one of those people is missing, one of the two is emptiness, is just awareness, is just light. Your little darknesses, your fullness of yourself, suddenly it's sort of pointless because there's nothing's going to be there to meet you. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, kind of.
Amazing experience. Just and yes, but the main thing for me was this ordinariness, this phenomenal lesson, the enlightened being, as he says, just an ordinary man. Yeah. Our minds find so hard to take that on, don't we?
Yes, and this is very powerful statement that you said, ordinariness, being in a very extraordinary situation, which you always dreamed of, being in one-on-one with Master. And there you are, and it's very ordinary. You felt and grounded in place.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I've heard Zen Master hit their disciples, and there you are right next to Osho. Did you get ever hit from the Master?
Sure did. But I want to say, before I talk about any specific hits, I felt very vulnerable being the question asker. I've just said to you, I just sort of want to get out of the way and not be there, and I wasn't needed as a personality. When we started the Zen series, Sudden, are you still there? Do you remember the year it was? Doesn't matter. In Pune too. 88, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah. One day he said, we're going to start this series of live Zen, so I was asked to go to his library and choose sutras. And so then I would read the sutras out in discourse. Oh, and he'd said before the first one, about an hour before we were due to start, someone was sent to say, he said, and tell Maneesha to make up some questions. And so that lasted only me asking questions for, I think, a couple of years. I once counted, I think I asked something like, nearly 400 questions in that time. And I'm just saying all this to say that I knew he would use those questions to hit me if he wanted to. So I felt very vulnerable. Questions would come to me and I'd submit them and he'd respond to them. I had this image of myself like being him performing surgery on me, which, he was in a way.
Yeah.
And me like lying on the operating table, and he's the surgeon with his scalpel and his mask, and everyone present is like the medical students sitting up in the theater watching this dissection. And I felt as vulnerable as if you hadn't had anesthetic. And of course, there was no anesthesia in Osho's presence. It wasn't about going to sleep, but being fully alert and available and open and surrendered. I felt very aware of my existential nakedness, my vulnerability, and I wanted to be like that. I didn't want to protect myself. I was feeling, Osho, just do whatever you need to do. And in return, I just felt, as I've said before, incredible love and respect. I just felt so respected by him. It was just incredible. And yes, I did get hit. I remember once I asked a question. He said, "This is an intellectual question, Maneesha. We are not here to discuss intellectual questions. Whoops. But, it was quite a challenge for me because I had 24 hours between one discourse and the next to think up questions. And they weren't to be intellectual. They had to be experiential. I mean, and if you're sleeping for 8 of those hours, how much time do you have to have an experiential experience from which you can extract a question to ask Osho about? And the sutras, you guys who know these Zen sutras, they're so enigmatic.
Yeah.
How to ask a question about these complete enigmas. It meant, this is my reasoning, in order to ask a question about this extraordinary Zen story, it presupposes I understand a little bit about it in order to understand what I don't understand and therefore create a question from. So all this stuff, it was really amazing. And I'd sometimes say to friends, why is he asking me to ask these questions? Because then, the other night he just said, everyone's questions are pointless. It's all the questions come from the mind. And yet he's saying to me, write questions every day. So I did think later, wow, if anyone's had the opportunity to ask all the questions, it's me. I won't have any more questions after Osho's no longer available. But of course I do. But it was amazing. It was an amazing experience and wonderful growth for me in not defending myself, being available. And then when I did get hit, just taking that on board and sitting right in front of him, just feeling that proverbial thing of I wish the floor would open up and swallow me, just feeling so ashamed and unconscious, and that being there and just feeling whack. And the biggest hit he gave me happened to be on my birthday. He wouldn't have known that. And in the after evening meeting, some friends were having a party for me and someone else whose birthday happened to be. I thought, I have to go and face everyone after being publicly hit. But anyway, his doctor came. Osho had sent his doctor to see me and say, Osho wants to know if he hurt you, if you're feeling hurt. Of course, that just made me cry. Just so much love, so much caring, so much respect.
Maneesha, I'm going to share a picture, if you allow me. That's the picture when you heard that your father just passed away.
Yes.
And you were right, sitting with Osho and asking him about what has just happened. Would you like to share that moment with us, if that's okay?
Yes, sure. Yes, in the afternoon, several hours before darshan, I'd received a telegram from Australia from my brother saying that my father had just left his body, had a heart attack in the night. And I absolutely adored my father. And that's when I talked earlier about the heartbreak of deciding to stay with Osho. That was the heartbreak of not being able to return to him, by whom I felt so loved and whom I loved. He did come to Pune very briefly before this time when he left his body. So he met Osho, which I was happy about, of course. So, and then Osho's caretaker came to me when I was doing that sniffing at the gate ritual, checking people, and said, Oh, I was told to go to see her, and she said, she's in Osho's kitchen. She said, I hear your father's left his body. And I said, yes. And so she said, I'll tell Osho. And so I was in darshan as usual, doing my work of writing notes and so on. And then at the very end, that scene, he called me up. He said, so Maneesha, your father has left his body. Yes, Osho. And he, in short, gave me this meditation, which he said, tonight, just sit, feel you are sitting, something like this. Feel you as he is there and you're sitting in his presence, and just say anything unfinished, anything you need to say to him. Yeah, so this was essentially the meditation, just to talk to my father. So obviously that was a very strong moment. And in fact, I didn't do the meditation because I didn't feel an incompletion with my father. I felt so loved by him and loved him so much. I felt him around me, especially in the next days. I felt him around Chantezu Auditorium, loving me. I don't think he had to forgive me. That would be my terminology, but he just loved me. That's how I felt. And I was so, so thrilled he'd met Osho. Later he said he'd come to a discourse in Chantezu. Later he wrote to me from Australia that sitting in the discourse is one of the most beautiful experiences of his life. And that just meant so much to me, that I felt the connection had happened between my father and Osho. So that was a huge gift.
Yeah, thank you. That brings the subject of your research into this death and process of dying. Actually, I'd like to invite Sadhana to, share or actually ask how this Osho Bardo started.
Before that, I would like to ask Maneesha about this talking to body therapy.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
Yes, talking to the body mind. Yes, that was the last.
Yeah. Yes.
That was the last instance in which I.
Meditative therapy. Yes. Yeah.
That was the
And you
last
said
instance.
he worked on you while developing the therapy. Osho worked on you.
Well, this is the way it went.
Yeah.
As many of you know, I had migraines for many years, and he mentions them in discourse and so on. And after we returned to Pune 1, after he'd been incarcerated in jail by the American government, he suffered a lot of pain. And at one stage, he had pain down his right arm. And he sent Amrito, his doctor, to say something like, tell Maneesha to talk to her body, and just to talk to her body. I've forgotten the exact words. And he said, I've got pain down here. So Amrito was to tell him, Osho says he's got pain in his right arm and he's talking to his body. And so he suggests you try it too. So there was a little to and fro. I would then tell Amrito, tell Osho this is happening. And then Osho would say, this is what's happening for me. So, for example, at one point, I said to Amrito, I call my pain my fishwife. In Australia, a fishwife is someone who nags you, an irritating presence. So I used to call my migraines my fishwife, so the migraine would come and I'd talk to it, say, oh, you fishwife, there you are again, stopping me do what I want to do. So I told that to Amrito, and he told Osho, and the message came back, no, don't talk to the pain. Yeah?
Yeah.
And also, perhaps he said, but I got to, that I was antagonistic to the pain. I was giving it this name of something's nagging, a fishwife, ugly, nagging presence.
Yeah.
Don't talk to the pain. So that as the meditation developed, it was more about talking to the healthy part.
Yes.
Yes. And that's such a existential lesson for me about, which I see is very much his emphasis about don't give energy to what is not.
Yes.
You know, don't give energy to a lack of things. Don't give energy to the negative, not because he's a positive thinker, but because the no is about what is lacking, what is not, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I really got from that interchange.
Yeah.
It was
And
such an intimate sort of
yeah.
this toing and froing, Osho telling me, sending Amrito to tell me how he was progressing with his own experiment with his body. Yeah.
And this became one of the main guidelines of this meditative therapy, that don't talk to the pain, because pain
Yes.
is a guest.
Yes.
Host is the part of your body.
Yes.
That's why talk to the body. And another thing connected to this, he also said that pain is a message from the unconscious. So don't call pain a pain.
Yes. And certainly
The
don't call
moment
it a fishwife.
fishwife, no, that they're just calling pain a pain. Never, because when the moment you say pain, you don't want it.
That's right. I was very
Yeah,
antagonistic.
you become
Yes.
inimical.
Yeah.
So it was
That's
very
right.
friendly. Make friends.
Yes.
So okay,
Yes.
after that, then he worked with Medita, who was a hypnotherapist, and then the rest of the story, then we know. Okay, then that takes us to your great creation, Osho Bardo. So, like talking to body mind, this Osho Bardo is also created out of Osho's words. Whatever he said about death and dying and about Bardo, so then Maneesha will explain how she collected all this material from his writings and then developed the therapy. So it
It
was a
was while we,
meditation or therapy.
it was, it's a meditation. While we were in Uruguay, someone asked Osho about the Tibetan Bardo, and Osho talked at length about it. And one of the things he said was, this is the most significant contribution Tibet has made to the world. It's a small country, but this is much more significant than all the atom bombs and so on of bigger, wealthier countries. He said it's a valuable process, and we need something for contemporary people. We need a process, a contemporary version or a process like it, and that his people would bring this about, something like that, that we could create it. Now, at that time in Uruguay, I wasn't particularly interested, especially in the subject of death. Of course, then later I'd think, oh, why didn't I ask him the next day in discourse, Osho, you mentioned a new version of of Bardo. What would be your guidelines for that?
Yeah,
I so wish I'd asked him, but I didn't think of it.
yeah,
But
sure.
what I did do was to look at all the references he's made to dying consciously, and also his comments about the Tibetan Bardo, because he has endorsed that. It's just that he's saying it needs a whole sort of rework for contemporary people. And then Sudhir came on board, many of you will know, and I'd made a prototype, and then some years later he joined our work, Osho Samasati, and I said to him, I want to update that first version I made. Could you work with me? So together we fine-tuned the wording using what Osho has said, and also, you know, at the end of discourse he leads us in this death meditation, doesn't he?
Yeah.
So we use some of the phrases, you'll hear them, that will be familiar to you.
Yeah.
Some of the phrases are from the evening meeting discourses.
Yes.
Because Sudhir and I didn't want to say anything of our own, because we don't know, we can't remember our last death. We want to use Osho's words, and so that his people would know they were being guided by Osho, by his conscious remembrance of what it is to die also. So that's how Osho Bardo has come about, and that's now available in 9 different languages, including English. And the workshop, which is happening in a couple of weekends, July the 30th and the 1st of August, be 4 hours on the Saturday and 4 hours on the Sunday. Osho says, once you've known that you are the ocean, you can never again be the wave. I feel this is a really, really significant workshop for all of us, because all of us are going to leave our body at some point. The thing is, we don't know when. When is it your turn or my turn? It's not to do with age. So it can happen anytime. So we need to start preparing now. And that's why I suggest everybody, just as a matter of course, you go through the Osho Bardo workshop. Some people repeat it, but just do it at least once. And this is a great opportunity that Osho Dallas is making available. And Rakesh is organized in such a way that as many different time frames are taken into account. If you'd like to know more about Osho Bardo, please go to my website. Could you put our address up, please? Rakesh, oshosamasati.org.
Yes.
There's videos, me talking about Osho Bardo. There's stuff to read about Osho Bardo and Osho on death and dying. Do you have that name? oshosamasati.org. There you go, but it's not actually capital O, capital S, just lowercase, oshosamasati.org. Yes. And Rakesh, thank you. You're going to put up the name of my books?
Yes.
So what I've been talking to you about tonight is covered. The first book covers Pune 1, 74, all leaving there, Rajneeshpuram, and then it finishes on the day Osho's arrested. And that book is called Osho, the Buddha for the Future. It's available as an ebook, and it's about to be released as an audio book. Fortunately, I recorded it in Pune at the meditation resort in time. So that's coming out soon. Osho, the Buddha for the Future. Osho, 12 Days That Shook the World has been in print. That's about to come out as an ebook, as is One Man Against the Whole Ugly Past of Humanity. So that second book, 12 Days That Shook the World, that refers to the 12 days Osho was in jail. So that's about the period of his incarceration. Also covers the activities of sannyasins all around the world and press coverage. And One Man Against the Whole Ugly Past of Humanity is about the world tour. And Osho described those 3 books as the historical documentation of his work. So do look out for those. Thank you, Rakesh, and thank you, Sadhana.
Yeah, it was a great, very beautiful.
So we have this workshop. Friends, now also, these days there's a video circulating around YouTube and social media that a Buddhist monk left his body consciously. And even there's a lot of discussion about it, to die consciously. So, as these topics becomes more prevalent in the society, it just tends to become more glamorous than the real thing. So, Maneesha, would you like to share dying consciously? What's the reality in that? How do you perceive that?
Well, briefly, in a sentence, before we can hope to die consciously, we need to be living consciously. So the preparation starts now. And as we've already said, we don't know where we are in the queue. So absolutely, if you have been and are trying to live consciously, then you will want to die consciously, surely. You see, the way I see it is living and dying is actually one process. We call this blob living, we want more of it, and this bit we call dying, and we don't want to know about it. But actually, it's all one process. So in order for this bit to be conscious, we need to start rehearsing now, living now. Yes, and the issues that come up for us in everyday life, the challenges are going to be very like the challenges that come up in dying. So start the work on yourself now, meditate now. become familiar with that death-like experience of going inside, of being alone, of going into the unknown. So through meditation, any passive meditation, we can start not only becoming familiar with that space, but loving that space. So that when your time comes, when my time comes, and we realize this is it, it's not like, oh my God, this is it, but okay, I know this space. This is the space I meet and love and melt into in my daily meditation. And that's going to make a huge difference to whatever happens next, according to the mystics. And anyway, even while we're leaving, to be able to leave in gratitude, gracefully, but in a relaxed way, what a huge gift that would be, no?
So, friends, Maneesha and I would like to invite you to embrace that experience in Osho Bardo workshop in the last week of July. All the information is there on oshodallas.com. So, Maneesha, before we dance, I want to ask you one last question. I know you must be tired, but this is something I've been wanting to ask. So, if you were given an opportunity to go back in time and relive, what advice would you offer to a young girl who loved ballet and a stunning girl carrying guitar, singing in the coffee shops of Melbourne? That's you. What advice did you offer to her?
Do exactly what you did.
Oh, wow.
I mean, I ended up with Osho. I'm not going to change anything. Do what you did. Follow your nature. Do what makes you happy. I've always been very selfish all my life. I've always taken it for granted. I'm here to be happy, and that's what I've done. Never done anything I didn't want to do, or if it felt that I didn't want to do it, I found a way to enjoy it. So yeah, I would say to that girl, okay, there are some blips along the way, but you made it to Osho, so I'm not going to change anything.
Wow. It's very unheard of, but thanks for sharing that. That's beautiful. A lot of people just gonna want to go back and change the things, but this is perfect. Thank you. So shall we dance now?
Yes, we've got a beautiful song, Gratitude. Yeah, Dancing Gratitude. This is my favorite song. Let's enjoy this beautiful song. And thank you, Sadhana and Rakesh, so much. And all of you who came today, thank you so much. I hope to see you at the workshop.
Yeah.
Let's hit the music.
Dancing, yes.
one thing left to say, that is to thank you for this day, for earth and sky, for fire and sea, for all I gratefully receive, for simply walking on this earth, for every challenge, every birth, for all the wonders beyond belief, for all I gratefully receive, for every kindness, every smile, for every contrast, every style, for every breath and sunny skies. And so I thank you for the music.
That was very beautiful, Maneesha. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, so touching.
So touching.
Thank you both very much, Sadhna, Rakesh, and all of you, and Prada, Kalakeli, everybody, my sister Kavita, Padmini, other friends who I can't see your names, Gunagit. Yeah, so much love, and hope to see you at the workshop very soon. Yes, Anuprada, good one.
So we're going to have Anuprada next week
Yes.
with the chakra sound meditation. So we'll see you next weekend.
Wonderful.
And see you at the workshop. All the information is there, oshodallas.com. Go ahead and then book it, and we'll see you there.
Yes,
you.
lots of love.
Okay,
Gandraj,
bye.
hello, darling. Bye.
Okay.
Satgyan, bye, guys. Thank you so
Bye,
much.
Rakesh.
Bye.
Okay.